All right. With that, it is now time to look forward by looking back a little on the spring. Um, Solid spring. It looks like everybody came out of it relatively healthy. Hopefully, Carolina can build on what was probably a very good spring and go forward. Obviously, there's a few things that have happened since the bowl game that we need to talk about. James is here with me now. He and his dog Bella are joining in via Facebook audio here. And so, yeah, let's
Yes,
just
sir.
get into it. Good spring, but, to go back to kind of where we left off from the bowl game. Obviously it was a disappointing bowl game, but I was at the spring game last night, and I thought about this a couple of years, or I guess now 15 years ago or so, when Carolina lost to UConn. Given the way the regular season ended in 2009, the bitter disappointing ending with UConn and the Papa John's, the infamous Papa John's.com bowl, where it was just
Oh,
miserable as miserable can be. It was cold. They ran out of pizza in the first quarter. Carolina played horribly, but given the way the regular season had ended, and given the way that the offseason had gone, you could tell that there was a lot of momentum and a lot of energy going forward there. And I feel like it's very similar to this year, because I just don't think that the disappointing ending of the Citrus Bowl really had that much of a lingering effect. Yeah, it hurt in the moment, but what we've seen so far is kind of a rejuvenation in the program. A lot of people are high on Carolina right now. Many are picking Carolina to go to the college football playoff. Many are picking Lenora Sellers to be a Heisman candidate, both of which are very good. Expectation around here has not been very high before. Obviously, those years that we were talking about earlier, you know, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, there was a lot of expectation there. Carolina met those expectations by
it
going
fizzled out.
to the SEC championship and then having 3 11 win seasons after that. But then uh, right after that, it just plummeted. And, we go through the years with the Muschamp era that we went through. We get the Beamer, and now we finally have a quarterback and, a coaching staff that I think the fans are high on, that the media is high on, and they have a pedigree to back it up. Uh, Looking back at the recruiting cycle, you can understand why.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the Papa John's.com bowl obviously will forever go down in Gamecock infamy, certainly not in fame for a lot of us around. And that was kind of that game where that one and I believe the bowl game against Iowa were two of the games that kind of had the HBC thinking, or maybe it was Missouri. We beat
No,
Iowa
it,
in
it
that
was
one.
it was the Iowa game in the
Oh, was
Outback
right.
Bowl.
Yeah, so that was the first one, not the other Outback Bowl were Nebraska and Michigan, but those were the good ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, the HBC had actually was pondering at the time, and he's like, "Should I do this anymore? Have I lost it?" Kind of like what we've seen with the baseball team. Like, am I losing my touch? Am I too old? And then the Gamecocks were able to bounce back from that, and just those tenacious defenses that the combination of Ellis Johnson and Brad Lawton built together, just that belief. And say what you will about him as the defensive coordinator, but Lorenzo Ward is a defensive back coach as well. That staff just gelled really well together. Um,
Yes.
just whatever you put on the front seven, the, the back four, whoever they put out there, they just had some. They had some like mercenaries out there, dude. It was like trained killers.
And don't forget, at
Like,
that time, one of the biggest reasons why Carolina was able to get going like that, because they were able to haul in such monster recruiting
mhm.
classes spurred on by Shane Beamer.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, certainly. I mean, Shane Beamer certainly, if we were in real estate, he was this young cat that everybody was kind of like, man, I don't know about this dude. He's a little loopy. He's out in the wrong area trying to sell a home. Like I don't think he knows. I don't think he knows his knee from his elbow. And then he started making a couple multi-million-dollar sales because he got Dylan Stewart, and then he just kept getting superstar players. And look at Lenore Sellers. I mean,
I
I
was just getting to
saw.
say, I mean, that's probably the biggest one so far.
Mhm.
Obviously, you've got some 5 stars in there, Dylan Stewart, Nick Harbor in there, but really,
Yep.
not only his ability to get guys to buy into him, but getting the right guys to buy into him. He did it back when he was an assistant. He did it when he was able to flip guys like Alshon Jeffrey and Stephon Gilmore, who were committed to other programs at that time, and he was able to sell Carolina and sell the dream, if you will. And I'd say it turned out pretty well for those guys, and I think it's going to turn out pretty well for the guys that are already on campus right now.
Yeah, I think the difference between if you look back to Will Muschamp versus forward to Shane Beamer, I think Will Muschamp saw our job as kind of a resuscitation job for him and something he could come in and turn around and try to parlay that into Auburn, Alabama, Georgia type job, which obviously the only one of those that came open was Auburn. But um, he was he tried to parlay our job into something better. He saw it as a stepping stone, whereas Shane Beamer's been here and done that and grew up in Charleston and truly is someone that sees the South Carolina job as a destination job. And I know we both hate that being like a precursor for the job, so I agree with you. But at the same time, what I'm saying is this dude's not just flapping his gums. Like Shane Beamer truly believes South Carolina can become a contender, and we're realistically a bad call away from the college football playoffs last year. And I think that says a lot, just that we were right there on the cusp, and this team was on life support, and myself and many others thought this team was going to flatline and we are going to have that 6-6, 5-7 type season, and then they just proceeded to rattle off six in a row. I mean, including huge victories against Mizzou and Texas A&M and Clemson.
Don't
Um,
forget going on the road to Norman and just curb stomping a very let's be honest, a mediocre Oklahoma team, but nevertheless, it's going to Norman and again curb
yeah,
stomping the Oklahoma Sooners in the first matchup between those two schools, and then turning it around 2 weeks later after a bye week, and then just steamrolling literally on the ground. The job that they did offensively against a pretty solid Texas A&M team,
yeah,
um, and then having that miracle comeback against Missouri, having that miracle comeback against the upstate school, and just a shot, just a few inches higher, and maybe we're talking about a 10-win season. Who knows? But it is what it is. We were a 9-4 team last year, and it just
mhm.
again is what it is, and that's okay. Um, losing a bowl game. I think the point is that losing a bowl game is not program breaking, if you will. I don't know if it really ever was, but going
Especially in the NIL. Not to interrupt you, but especially in the NIL era, it's kind of playoffs or bust. I mean,
yes,
I agree with you. It's either going to be a small boost. It's kind of like a shot of adrenaline to your program. It's like a little boost of energy. But if you die, it's not going to put your program
it
on life
it
support
just
anymore.
gives your program something more to talk
Yep.
about. Whereas,
Yep.
okay, went 9-4, went to a good bowl game. That's
Yep.
all you have to leave it at. But then Illinois. Whereas you say you might be Brett Bielema in Illinois, you're saying, hey, we just won 10 games, won our bowl game, momentum's high. Momentum is still high for South Carolina. There is no question
Yes.
about that in my mind. And you
Yes.
again, the thing we're finally leading off with is you look at the recruiting cycle
Hmm.
that Carolina went through this year, both with with three areas that are key right now, and this is the era we live in now. High school, of course, is still going to be one of the most important areas you have in recruiting. Couple that in with the portal, but what we saw
Yep.
this year, as opposed to 2 years ago, Carolina has done a fantastic job this time of retaining talent. The NIL
Hmm.
program is strong with the Garnet Trust. You look at the retention that Carolina had, being able to maintain and hold on to guys like Lenora Sellers, Nick
Uh
Harbor,
huh.
Dylan Stewart, uh, the Kilgores, Judge Collier. You look at all of these players who are back that Carolina
Yeah.
had last year. It is not like what you saw 2 years ago when you had some pretty top notch guys that you were going to count on in
Hmm.
2023, basically just up, leave, and bolt. Uh, Beamer, the Garnet Trust, the coaching staff have done a very good job this time uh, at being able to bring in solid players, retain the core elements of what they were able to retain, or players who still had eligibility this year.
Yeah.
Obviously, what we lose in the NFL draft with Nicky Manwari, Demetrius Knight, Kyle Kennard, Rocket Sanders, and Joshua Simon. Those guys are obviously they're gone, but not because they saw that the grass was greener on the other side at another college. They're moving on to the NFL and going on to their professional lives, which you can't really blame them for. And going back to the whole bowl thing, another reason why losing a bowl game is not program breaking and not as demoralizing as it might have used to be is because of the holdout or the opt out era that we live in now, and that's been the case now for I guess the last 10 years. When players started doing that, um, we as fans I think have started understanding it a little bit more. Yeah, you don't want to basically risk your livelihood out there in a game that to them, I guess you could say, uh, is not as meaningful as a playoff game, which is understandable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Looking at the high school recruits that Carolina has been able to bring in this year,
Hmm.
6 wide receivers and
Yeah.
none in the portal, by the way. All 6 were high school guys. And Carolina was
Hmm.
also able to retain Nick Harbor, Vendrickis Jacobs, uh, Jared Brown, uh, Michael Smith, the tight end. Um, who else am I forgetting?
Mazia Bennett.
Mazio Bennett is back, of course. Uh, so yeah, you look at that, and then let's talk a little bit about the 6 receivers or some of the receivers that Carolina has brought in. I'm going to start with one who I was impressed with last night, uh, Brian Rowe.
Hmm.
Rowe last night looks like he's ready for the college game. Um, Early enrollee, guy that looks like he is going to be able to come in, plug himself in, and get going, as they might say, and maybe be able to make an opening day contribution. That game against Virginia Tech is coming up quickly. Uh, Carolina has lost some guys in the passing game. Obviously, we just mentioned it. Joshua Simon was Carolina's leading receiver last year. So you're going to have to find somebody to step in. It may not be Brady Hunt. It may not be Michael Smith. It may not be from the tight end position. It's probably going to have to be a wide receiver spot. And the more weapons you have for Lenoris to throw to, the better it becomes and the easier it'll become. And having a guy like Brian Rowe Jr. is going to be uh, very, very crucial. But then you have another guy in there that I think is one of the higher profile guys coming into this class. If you want to touch on this a little bit, Irmo High School's Donovan Murph.
Yeah, Donovan Murph was in the I want to say the Under Armour All American game, and this guy, just like a freak specimen of an athlete. I'm trying to pull up his measurables here, but I mean he's at right now he's weighing in at 6'1.5", 188. So obviously he'll put a little size on, but just looking up the numbers as I look down at my phone here is rated a 93 uh 4-star for 24/7 Sports, and the composite 4-star 93. If you look at his uh on three profile, I want to say his on three was uh even higher than that. And just looking at the measurables here, well, yeah, he's a 92 4-star on there. They've got him as number 181 overall, but just to add someone with his catch radius, just looks like a kid that from watching his film, if you just put it in his vicinity, he's gonna go up and high point the ball, bring it down. He's gonna trap the ball against his rib cage if he needs to make the catch. He's just that kind of type that you got to have him on the field on third down. Um, he to me, anytime you can bring a local kid like that, you look at what happened with Nicky Manwari, and you got that same kind of athletic freak and Donovan Murph, and all the big boys came calling. It wasn't like this was a walk-in layup for Shane Beamer and Mike Furry. They had to stave off all the competition. You had the upstate school, um, even a lot of the bigger schools. Without looking down at his offer list, I mean he was not hurting to find a home.
Who are
More
some of
than
those other offers?
yeah, let's look that up real quick. I know it was quite an extensive list, and I know probably some other fans are going to come on here and say, "Well, we didn't offer him. He wasn't good enough for us." Well, okay. Well, I'm just telling you, this is just I don't report the weather. Um, it says as we wait for it to load, it says that he had a ton of them.
Alabama, Ohio
It's a,
State, Florida,
yes, Auburn, also our enemies from the upstate, Colorado, Duke,
Oregon.
Florida, Florida State, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Indiana, Maryland, Miami, NC State or Mimsy State as we call them, North Carolina, or BPOE as your dad calls them,
Yeah, yeah.
Ohio.
We'll leave some of these inside jokes to ourselves, but uh, the point is that they talk about the star ratings not being that crucial, but when you have that many high profile schools after you, that
Yeah,
does say something. Now, Murph could fizzle out. We don't know yet. Obviously, the star ratings, of course, at this point do not matter, but when you look at there are reasons why these players are rated so highly, and the more of those higher rated players you get, the more likely one of them is going to pan out at some point.
yeah, absolutely. I was actually just looking on my phone. It's gonna be hard for everybody to see on the screen, but this is breaking. The Garnet Trust now has Lenore Sellers signature shades, and they're black with garnet lens. They're actually really sweet.
The Garnet Trust, by the way, this is just kind of out of left field here that we're pulling in. But the Garnet Trust has done a fantastic job this offseason. I don't think there's any way you can sugarcoat that or
Yeah,
overstate that. The Garnet Trust has really come a long way from when it started. There was a lot of talk last year about, when Carolina was sitting at 500. Right before that, right after that Alabama game, people were talking, or even after the Ole Miss game, because everyone knows how much Kiffin has played the portal, how much Ole Miss has invested in their NIL, and people were talking about, well, what do we have to do to get there? Well, people finally opened up their wallets and have invested, and
yes,
we both are Garnet Trust members. We encourage people, if you can, the low look, it's $10 a month at the lowest starting price. That's not too shabby. That's less than any of your streaming fees. We encourage people to do it because the more that you contribute to football, the more it'll help football, the more you'll have an off season like this, where not only can you retain players, you can go out into the portal and get other players and go into the high school ranks and say, our NIL program will take care of you if, you are worthy of being signed to the NIL program. Uh, we talked about the players who've been retained. Um, I'd like to touch on a couple of transfer guys. The first one I'm going to touch on is somebody that is turning heads and somebody that might be a diamond in the rough, similar to what we saw last year out of the same position, the running back position. With maybe he won't have the same production that Rocket had. I think that'd be unfair, but Rasul Faison looks like somebody
mm-hmm.
that could come in uh, and be a part of a three-headed monster that maybe he could lead it. Jawan Howell certainly looked like he could be the guy in the bowl game. Um, and certainly Oscar Attaway looks like somebody that could carry the load as well. I think that Carolina has a very strong running back room right now. Bringing in Faison, I think, was huge for this coaching staff. And I think the running game, you couple that with what Lenora Sellers can do with his legs, what they might be able to do with the receivers with some reverse action, some of that triple option stuff that Carolina runs. It's going to be, again, I think, a very hellacious backfield, and it looks like it's going to be a very strong one next year.
sans the fumble in the bowl game as well, because I think it was from him.
It was how?
It was how,
Yes.
yeah. But I did hear because I didn't make it to the spring game, of course. But I heard Matthew Fuller also ran really really well at the
Fuller
game.
looked like he could be, God forbid somebody has an injury. And who knows, maybe Fuller can work his way into the rotation as well. But Fuller looked like he could be he looked like an SEC running back. Now,
Mm-hmm.
again, as I've been trying, I took my girlfriend last night and she was, I think, oohing and eyeing at a lot of people. And I was just like, baby, it's the spring game. You have
It's a
got
scrim.
to take this with a grain of salt. And
It's
I'm
a
not
scrimmage.
trying to rag on her. I'm just trying to say, look, yes, Fuller looked like he could be a serviceable back next year or this coming year. But again, I remember in 2006, Cade Thompson absolutely blew Blake Mitchell out. And less than a year later, he's out of the program. Blake Mitchell
Uh-huh.
is the guy. So, yes, again, a glorified scrimmage.
Hmm.
And we'll go right ahead and get into the spring game last night. I was there, and obviously, um, yeah, again, a couple of those guys that are newcomers certainly look like they can be difference makers. Those are the guys that had something to prove, and those are the guys you wanted to see something out of. Cutter Woods looked like somebody that might be. Obviously, nobody is touching Lenoris this year, unless Lenoris, God forbid, has an injury again. But I liked what I saw from Cutter Woods last night. Um, he has a nice deep ball. Need to see a little bit more out of him. Um, I hate to say this, but just did not see much of what I liked or what I was expecting out of Aaron Nolan last night. Cutter Woods outplayed him. There's no question about it. Was um, Cutter Woods came out of that scrimmage last night looking like the solid number two guy. So and look, Aaron Nolan's still in his freshman year, but there's room to grow, no question about that. Um, and it's very fortunate right now that Lenoris is the guy that they can sit behind, develop their own game, and hopefully, more good things will happen in the future. But they can stay behind Lenoris right now, observe from the sideline, get reps in
Yeah.
practice. That's what it's going to take, and that is the biggest thing, of course, about spring practice. Last night was probably the least important of all of the practices that they get. Every other practice is much more important than what you saw last night, aside from maybe the first practice where they're just in shorts and helmets. But nevertheless, um, the biggest thing for last night, and the biggest thing I always say in a spring game is, did anybody get hurt? The answer to that is thankfully no. Um, you know, you'd like to see a little bit more, but at the same time, you don't need to risk anything. So, you know, Sellers was out after 2 series. I think Harbor was out after 3. Um, but again, the newcomers, you get to see a little bit more of them. The offensive line was very sloppy, but the fortunate thing is that what you saw last night, that is not your first team playing together. That is not anywhere close to the final product. And that's something I think if you were there and watched it closely, you would be very thankful for. Um, we've seen spring games. We've seen players come out of nowhere in spring games and light it up. And then again, they light it up in the spring game and then are never heard from again. But it is of note to say, and I think the biggest storyline coming out of spring practice this year is Nick Harbor and the fact that he is dedicating this offseason to football and not touching track at all. That speaks volumes. And it also speaks volumes that last night at halftime during the awards, he was the offense's most improved player. There is no coincidence there. He definitely is making strides. And we saw him at the end of last season. I think it was probably I would say in the Vanderbilt game, where you start to say, hey, I'm seeing something out of him that I haven't seen yet. Yes, we know he can run fast, but this guy is 6'5" and has a bulldozer frame, and he started using it. And when he did that, the speed factor really came in. We saw that in the Missouri game where he had those 2 deep catches, and he had a pretty good game against the upstate school. A couple of those drives ended in turnovers, but at the same time, this guy looked like he could be the number one guy going into next season. And it would not surprise me if they list him as number one coming out of the fall camp and listing him number one going into the Virginia Tech game on the depth chart.
Yeah.
I think that, you look at what the young receivers last year did, Harbor included, you have to feel pretty good about where that group is along with the running back room. I think as we look ahead, whew, you know, we turn over to the defense, there is a lot of production that has to be replaced.
A lot of new faces across the board. I mean, you don't get a guy like Demetrius Knight to grow on trees. I mean, that was just
Or Kyle Kennard.
Kyle Kennard, especially. You can't. It's hard to replace not only their productivity but their leadership, and those are just high quality guys that you just can't help but pull for. And I'm really hoping for the best for both of them in the NFL. Um, and I do, and I know I may be jumping a bit ahead to say this, but I caution everyone that thinks because they hear the last name Clowney that Damon Clowney is going to be his cousin. And I had a guy tell me that on the phone, and I go, he goes, I hope he could be like his cousin. I said, let me stop you right there. He's not. He's not.
No.
You're comparing him to a number one overall pick. You're comparing him to what, a 4-time Pro Bowler. Um,
And not to mention maybe the most feared player in arguably the most feared player in college football history. Say what you will about his NFL career.
mhm.
He was you talk to any offensive coordinator that played or any offensive coordinator that went up against
Yeah,
Carolina from 2011 to
no doubt.
2013, they were having basically instant diarrhea watching film and seeing what Jadeveon Clowney could do and giving all that attention to Clowney. So, but yes, I am with you 100%. Damon, you know, I think that last name probably helped him have an inroad with Carolina, but I'm expecting him to come in and maybe be a serviceable backup for
Yeah,
now anyway, but I don't expect to see anything quite close to what resembled his 6'7", 220-pound cousin.
because the name to watch that we got out the portal is going to be Jalen Brown, who was unfortunately hurt, and that's the Missouri transfer. For those of you that don't know, but he's got tremendous range and potential upside. And I want to say, John, he's like a sophomore this year, right? He's either like a
Yes.
redshirt freshman or a redshirt
Yeah.
sophomore.
I'm looking at him right now on Rivals, and yeah, I think this is a great pickup for Carolina because obviously Dylan Stewart is back. Um, I want to see, and it may surprise people to hear me say this, but I want to see a little bit more out of Stewart this coming season.
Mm-hmm.
Um, having a guy like Kennard to play across from helped him tremendously. It's like when Clowney had Melvin Ingram or Devin Taylor to play across from. If
Yep.
you're going to be, um, you know, Superman on one side, you're going to need Batman on the other. Uh, there's just no other way around it. Yes, Stewart is a great player, but you need somebody on the other side and other people in the middle to draw attention to so that you can get those one-on-one matchups that you can beat easily. There were times last year, the Ole Miss game in particular, where there were times where Stewart had trouble. There's no question about it. Uh, it's not like he's playing against competition it's not like a man versus boys every single week.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, his presence will be felt. There's no question about that. But having somebody like this, having Brown there, is going to give him a lot of help. And I think it's going having, on the contrary, having Stewart there is going to be a big help for Brown. So I'm looking forward to seeing that duo work together, and hopefully, the guys in the middle are going to be able to create some havoc as well. Uh, you think about other guys in there. Trying to think about a couple of other guys that Carolina got out of the portal last or this past off season. Trying to look here. Sorry, I've got my phone and I'm
Yep.
scrolling here. Uh, if you want to help out, feel free to. Um, trying to see here. Yeah, I'm
We brought in the transfer linebacker we brought in. I'll probably butcher his name, but it was he was the German kid that came in from Bama.
yes.
I think it's Justin O'Con. I don't know. I don't want to butcher this. I'm like his family's gonna like sue me for slander or something here. Uh, it's like Okoronkwo or something like that. Does that
Okay.
sound
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. We'll roll with it. We'll give you a pass this time.
Dude, we'll just call him Justin O, like I did with
or
Albert. What's his
or
name from Missouri? The
yeah,
tight end,
Alberto
just Albert
or on
O.
a more local level, Desmond U.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're just waiting for a certain play-by-play announcer to pronounce that one out of excitement, but out of respect for him, we won't
Where's
say his
Vern
name.
Lundquist when you're where's Vern Lundquist where you need him? Or Brent, who by the way is getting into the NFL or into the Pro Football Hall of Fame this year.
Excellent,
Yeah,
well deserved.
absolutely.
Out of the transfers, I think you already hit on Faison, and you already hit on we both hit on Jalen Brown, and you brought up Justin O. But if you look even at just every one of them, kind of has some sort of impact they made on a
Mm-hmm.
previous team. A lot of experienced guys on the offensive line, and then even though, like we said with Damon Clowney, uh, still a ton of experience. Believe he played for 4 schools already. I think we're going to be the fourth. It's kind of ridiculous, but that's the portal era we're in.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is. A couple of other names I want to bring up. Staying on the defensive side, don't forget about uh, Gabriel Brownlow Dindy.
yeah, a
That's
lot of
going to
good
be,
reports for him.
yeah, I think that's a great pickup for Carolina. Um, Obviously, somebody that can come in and help plug in the middle there because Carolina lost everybody on the interior line that was starting last season. So a lot of wide open positions there. Hopefully, he can come in, plug a few gaps that are going to be there with the loss of Boogie Huntley, uh, T.J. Sanders, and trying to think. Sorry, having a brain cramp right now.
So, fun fact, while you're thinking of that,
All the guys on the interior defensive line. I got Boogie Huntley, T.J. Sanders, and I'm trying to think who the third one was. Oh man, I'm gonna kill. I am, I am struggling right now. 91
uh,
last year. Tonka
so I
Hemingway.
was
Tonka Hemingway. Thank you.
anyway, yeah, I had some sinus there. I was like trying to say it and thought snot was going to come out. So I'm
Uh,
like, oh no,
Beautiful, beautiful. Hey,
yeah,
while we're talking about transfers, one more last that caught my eye last night that I think people are going to be impressed with, and this could be one of the solid replacements for Joshua Simon. Jordan Dingle looked like he's ready to go.
yeah, yeah, good ball player, and the guy that's already got experience in the conference at Kentucky. They reading their message boards after he left, they were none too thrilled, and they were even less thrilled about him coming to play for Shane Beamer and Sean Elliott.
Yeah,
But
Kentucky was, let's just call it like it is. Kentucky got purged last year, and understandably so. I mean, what Mark Stoops said, uh, or what Mark Stoops tried to do last offseason, uh, is still not sitting well with pretty much anybody in the Kentucky camp. Kind of surprised he's going to make it to 2025. The question will be, will he make it out of 2025? Um, as we know, he's a good coach, but there's a lot of questions up in the air in Lexington right now. So, we're not on the inside there, but there could be still a few people that are unhappy with him right now, which would be understandable considering he he had the A&M job until the A&M fan base basically revolted on him. Still don't understand that one. I mean, looking for a new replacement for Will Muschamp, I would not have been upset in the slightest if Mark Stoops' name was on that list. Happy that we ended up with Shane Beamer, so all's well that ends well for us. Uh, but nevertheless, and I guess that kind of segues into the 2025 outlook. No need to start predicting uh, final records or anything like that, but maybe just we've touched on it a little bit about what this team is going to look like in 2025. Last season, I think it's going to be kind of the opposite of what last season was. Last season, especially early on, you saw this program leaning completely on one of the strongest defenses in the country and the conference. Uh, as good as some of these guys are, and look, let's also look at what's coming back on defense. Um, which one of the safeties is moving over in Nick Eamon absence? Is it DQ Smith or is it going to be Jalen Kilgore?
That's a great question. Off the top of my head, because I know last year Jalen played more of like a nickel position. I want to say.
Hmm. I believe it's Kilgore, isn't it?
I think you're right. I think DQ is going to kind of play that nickel role, and Kilgore is going to be the other safety, but I could be mistaken.
And I think that's going to be helpful because there have been times where DQ has not been in position. Um, there were times, I'm not going to call him a liability by any means. I mean, he certainly has had his moments, of course, but at the same time, there is still room for improvement. We've obviously touched on Jalen Kilgore coming back. Gerald Kilgore is going to be back. Um, but you lose some really good talent there in the backfield. Obviously, we mentioned Nick Eamon. Um, there's a lot that you lose with Eamon. Um, Lost a huge corner last year. Again, I'm having a brain lapse. I am so bad with names. And without them in front of me and without the season being in motion, I am,
Yeah,
yeah, help me out with the corner who we lost last year, top corner.
top corner from last year. I'm trying to think. No, Judge Collier's
Judge
back,
Collier is
right?
back. That's
So
one you can feel good about.
um, man, now I'm drawing a blank on it right now too. Who would have been a senior last
Number
year at
three.
corner? Oh yeah. Well, I'm not drawing a blank. We should both be ashamed of ourselves. Odie Fortune.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, you're right. I am ashamed of myself. When you forget names that are kind of the key core guys, you really want to kind of kick yourself on that, but it happens, I guess.
Yeah, what I love that T Gray did though, I mean, they immediately. I'm gonna have to take this hat off. They keep scratching me.
You're good.
But what uh what I love that T Gray has done is just getting two experienced guys, with Brandon Sisse, coming in from NC State,
I think that's going to
as
be a
well as
huge get going
yeah,
into this
and
season.
Miles Norwood from Ball State as well, another
Mhm.
experienced guy. And to me, those are guys that are plug and play, and bringing both of those two in, that allows that flexibility at the nickel position and the safety position. And then now because you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, because you're taking a Jalen Kilgore off of nickel to move him to cover corner or to a safety or whatever Coach White and Coach Gray end up doing. But you're now pulling two cornerbacks off now, and the fact that you can bring in two guys that have played at a high level and one in the power four is a big plus.
I agree 100% with that. And again, you talk about the edge position being a strong point for the defense this year, obviously with Stewart, and then you add Brown in there. I think the defensive line is going to be it's going to be solid. Again, don't expect to see what we saw a year ago where you had one of the best defenses in Carolina history. Um, I don't expect them to be historic by any means, but I do expect them to be solid and being able to keep Carolina in games and at times win games for Carolina. One of the things, certainly, that you look at from a year ago, why Carolina was able to be so successful defensively was the amount of turnovers that Carolina forced. And
Mm-hmm.
I think if Carolina can force a solid number of turnovers this offseason, this coming season, then I think you're going to see the offense take over and be able to march down on teams. And you look at what Carolina potentially can do this coming year, it's probably going to be a pretty good year. And hopefully it will live up to the billing, provided everything goes smoothly. We know, of course, not everything is going to go smoothly. Not everybody makes it to the end of the finish. Um, so you just hope you can weather some of those internal issues that at some point or another you're probably going to have. But nevertheless, I think that it is a solid unit coming back. Special teams, that's the one area I think you'll look at where you say, all right, this is probably where we have the most question marks right now. Um, Obviously, 2 years ago, uh, Carolina lost its one of its top producers in field goal kicking with help me out again.
Mitch Cheater.
Thank you. With Jeter transferring to Notre Dame. This year, Carolina loses um, Kai Kroger, who was one of the finest punters that Carolina has had in recent memory. You just hope that Carolina will be able to plug in a couple of guys that will be able to be productive, be solid, and not take you on the adventure that maybe Alex Herrera took you on last year. No offense to Alex. I mean, again, the game in the upstate, 2 touchdowns were scored by both teams, but the difference was a field
His
goal
field
that,
goal.
yes, a field goal that Herrera made there in the fourth quarter. And,
Yeah.
I remember looking at you in that, what I've dubbed the eternal hemorrhoid of the state of South Carolina. When I looked at you and I just said, "Oh boy, this is going to be an adventure," and he just drilled it right down the middle, of course. But then you go back to the bowl game and he missed two, I believe. I know he missed at least one, banged it off the upright. Uh, so you just hope you get a little bit better production out of your field goal kicking this year. Uh, I think that's probably going to be a huge factor early on. We'll see how big of a factor it'll be. Uh, but
Speaking of the kicker, if you don't mind if I interject,
go
I
for
didn't
it.
mean to cut you off there. I did read,
When you and I were coming back from Florida from the bowl game, we heard Coach Jody saying that we were definitely open to shop in the portal for a kicker. Well, apparently, I've read on both sites that Baylor's starting kicker entered the portal, and apparently there's lots of mutual interest there. So that's an interesting thing to follow.
And that's one of those positions where, football, as you and I both know, is a team game. It takes a while for everybody to gel, and everybody needs to be on the same page with one another. However, your kicker and your punter are probably the two positions that you could plug in right away and say, go out there and do your job, and they could probably do it. So if you have that ability to be able to go out there and do that and pull in a quality kicker like that, that would be hugely helpful going into 2025.
They named an entire stadium in Kentucky after him. You know that. So um,
Alex Herrera, like you said, no one asked him to wake up and be the starting kicker at South Carolina.
somebody fast out the portal, or just trust the guy you got. And I think we were looking at it as well. This kid's been here 4 years and worked with now
Yeah, it was
a
it was just
great
kind of a
special
case of
teams
you've just
coordinator with
got it's kind of like in, the old saying in
yeah.
NASCAR. Not that Mitch is a bad guy, or not Mitch, but not that Alex is a bad guy, but you have room for improvement. I think especially in the special teams game. So we shall see. Uh,
Him up, but his name is Max Kelly.
okay, that
I
Ryan Suckup comes to mind, especially right there, but they
Mhm.
ended up using him just as a kicker, and I think he turned out okay.
It's
And this
all.
is
I mean,
and Keller is the
very
one
probably
committed to Carolina right now and signed.
uh, Kelly.
Kelly okay.
And the number four kicker, according to 24/7.
Let's turn our attention to next week. The NFL
Mm-hmm.
draft takes place, and Carolina has a chance. Class from Carolina
Absolutely.
to go into the
Absolutely.
NFL. Looking forward to that. We'll recap. But you're going to see, you're probably going to see one on day one, I would think. You're going to see a it's probably going to end up being a steal somewhere. Eamon Kennard, Demetrius, that guys like Kennard and Eamon one of those guys, and this is just me talking. Drafted right now speaks volumes. You certainly hope that these guys will land in a good team and maybe help a team get to the playoffs next season.
Yeah. What was my man's name? Speaking of remembering the names, what was my man's name that came in from North Carolina Central, and he had the unsportsmanlike conduct penalties against the upstate, but he was making some killer blocks.
Oh
He had a big
man,
block on
I
this.
know
He had a
I
big
know of
block on
whom
the
you
Sellers drive.
speak.
It'll
Um,
come to me, but I'm just
it
drawing
was
a
a
blank
it was a
somewhere.
it was a unique name, that's for sure.
Yeah, it'll come to me. I need
Tory,
to look up
Tory.
blocks.
I can't remember his last name, but I believe his first name was Tory, was it not?
I gotta think about it.
Tory Simpkins, I think. Not Simpkins.
Forrest Tully Simpkins, that's
Sorry,
it.
Tory
You're right.
Sellis Simpkins. Thank you.
Yep, yep. We just kind of did that teamwork because I
Teamwork
was
makes the
actually
dream
right.
work.
Absolutely, I was kind of writing down like guys that are draft eligible, and I was trying not to skip anybody because so
Right.
far I've got 8 of them down, and I kind of went like Nick Evenwari, T.J. Sanders, Tonka Hemingway, Odie, Kennard, Rocket, Knight, Simpkins, and then in the process I skipped Huntley,
Yeah.
who's another draft eligible guy, and then
Sanders.
you've also, yeah, I've already had Sanders.
Okay.
Um, but is there another defensive back that's coming out other than Odie and Nick?
Trying to think off the top of my head, I can't recall another. No one that left early, because DQ Smith came back.
Oh, I know one that could get drafted late round is Dalvin Campbell at receiver.
Yes, Dale Von Campbell. He came on strong at the end of last season, and it is almost criminal. I'll say it. It was almost criminal that he did not get a touchdown there coming down the stretch, particularly that one in the upstate school game. But who knows? Maybe if he makes that catch, maybe they march down because they would have had more time. Doesn't matter. What happened. But he had a couple of key catches there, particularly in the Missouri game. He had those two big catches that, you know, were, I think, part of the difference in the ball game against Missouri. He had a big one against Illinois. That was the play right before the whole the brawl that was not almost broke out. And then he had that one against the upstate school where he was ruled out of bounds and it was ruled an incomplete pass. But he really did come on. Yeah, we'll say it was a touchdown, but it's okay. Doesn't matter. We won the game anyway. But at the same time, that could be a big steal. Might not be a guy that has a productive rookie year, but maybe a guy that 2 or 3 years playing in a good offense could really make a big impact in the NFL.
He just screams Jalen Brooks to me, who also of course played.
Yes, I agree with you 100% there.
A guy that came on late, that had all the skill set, but maybe didn't get the play in time he deserved. Dow Loggins and Mike Furry, both bros. We got to get y'all on the call, man. We got to have a little round table. I got to know why my boy 15 wasn't on the field week 1, guys. Come on now.
I believe he also got hurt against Ole Miss, did he not?
I think you're right.
I think if you remember, we were leaving the stadium that night. We saw a player going into the training room down there in the tunnel. I think that was him.
I think it was too, because I believe he ran into the.
He ran into the hedges bushes there.
Yeah.
I don't care what Georgia says; those are hedges.
They are hedges.
We are allowed to call them what they are. They're hedges, and we helped destroy them the night we beat Texas A&M.
I've never seen them like that before. I've been to a multitude of games, and I've never seen that in my life. It was madness.
I've never seen them like that in person. I saw them like that, in pictures and in archival footage on the news and whatnot, but never saw that like that close.
And I've seen them die before naturally, and
sure,
they're marauding over the winter and stuff after football is over. Stuff like that I've seen before, but I mean, they looked like twigs after the AM game.
Yeah, they were.
By the way, I can't remember if it was On 3 or 24/7 Sports posted a graphic, and they rated the top 5 atmospheres in college football this year, and number 1 was South Carolina versus Texas A&M.
I would agree with that. I wouldn't argue against that. There's certainly a lot of really good environments. Penn State comes to mind first, of course. Knoxville, Michigan.
I got to say, Wisconsin's up there with Jump Around. That's a crazy tradition.
Georgia, certainly Texas, LSU. Great environments. I'll throw BYU and Utah out there. I think those are great 100%. Environments as well. But I would definitely rate South Carolina up right there with them.
I gotta say, from us going to Alabama checks. It's awesome.
Yes, that was a great trip, by the way. Definitely would recommend that to anybody. Oklahoma was great. I know you didn't go with me on that one. We are going to LSU this year, though.
Yes, we are. We are. I'm looking. My dad said that was his favorite trip. He said that you get those Cajuns out there. He said, man, they love to drink, but they love to eat, and
they love Tiger football.
He says if you get them going, he says they're as friendly as they get, but especially when they get a little bit of that Louisiana spirits in them.
Yeah, you hear.
You don't understand a word they're saying.
You definitely hear horror stories about Tiger Stadium. I don't care if it's going to be one of the worst experiences. I'm looking forward to it right now. And hey, if anybody on there is listening and wants to give a comment here as to some of the best recommendations for LSU, please do so. We would love to hear where the place to eat is. Uh, so any recommendations will be taken seriously here. Um,
Give me all the crawfish, all the lobster, all that with the Cajun seasoning that I can stuff my face with.
and help me
I'm just
out
gonna
too
have
because
to
I've got a shellfish allergy, so I might need to find somewhere that has, excuse me, good barbecue
frog
or
legs,
good
baby.
pizza.
Frog legs.
Yeah.
No, hey, don't sleep on frog legs. Frog legs are good.
Okay. Okay. I'll take that into strong consideration. All right. About to wrap it up, but did not want to forget this. And one of the biggest stories coming out of this offseason, uh, really looking forward to this in early mid August. Carolina finally has a member of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Sterling Sharp is going to be inducted this offseason in just a few short months. Really excited about that. Had a wonderful college career, was having a wonderful professional career, but unfortunately, a career ending neck injury cut his career short after only
Yep.
7 short seasons. Arguably one of the best wide receivers to ever play at South Carolina, one of the best wide receivers to ever play in the NFL. Again, just so disappointing that his career was cut
Yeah.
short the way it was. Can you imagine how scary Green Bay in the late 90s would have been if Sterling Sharp had been with Brett Favre in those years that they were going to Super Bowls?
I mean, I just of all the things I've watched of Brett Favre, he raves about Sterling Sharp. All he ever talks about is he said everybody remembers Donald Driver, everybody remembers um, all these guys that played Greg Jennings, all these guys I played with. But he
Robert Brooks,
goes,
another Gamecock.
Robert Brooks, the Gamecock. But Brett Favre has said this multiple times, and it's readily available if you guys want to go on YouTube
And don't forget,
or
he did have a
TikTok.
year with Sidney Rice.
Yes, he did. But Brett Favre swears up and down the best receiver he ever played with. And he said, this was before Sterling was, of course, actually inducted. Brett Favre said that it was basically a mockery for Sterling Sharp not to be in the Hall of Fame.
And
And
I
I
don't know
think
if you
when a
saw
guy like Brett,
Shannon's. I don't know if you saw Shannon's Hall of Fame induction ceremony when he was inducted. In his speech, he said, "I'm the only member of this fraternity who can say I'm not the best athlete in my own family that's on this
yep,
stage." Uh,
yep,
and it's
yep,
so wonderful, I think, for Carolina
that's
to
respect.
finally have somebody who can represent the school in Canton. Um, this is right. I think this is about as high of an individual award and achievement for a South Carolina alum as it was for George Rogers to win the Heisman Trophy. It really doesn't get
Yeah,
much bigger than this, and I don't know if South Carolina fans truly appreciate this yet. How big this is. I don't think Sterling is
yeah,
going to be the last. I think that Sterling is going to be one of a few that are going to be in there in our lifetime. I certainly think that when Stephon Gilmore hangs it up, he'll be in there as well. But
one hundred percent.
I think it's fitting that Sterling is the first because Sterling played at a time when you college football, of course, was extraordinarily regional at that time. And he played at Carolina at a time when Carolina was independent in football. And not it was not a time where you could watch Carolina week in and week out. So kind of some of the stuff that
Yeah,
was happening, it almost sounded like it was legend or folklore or whatever it may be. There is footage that proves this guy was arguably one of maybe the two best receivers to play at Carolina. It's arguable right up there with Alshon Jeffrey, I would say. He was a little bit different because he was big, but he had a lot more speed than Alshon had. And I think that you look at what Sterling did in college, certainly he is well enshrined in Atlanta at the College Football Hall of Fame. This is just icing on the cake. And I think people, as time progresses and as people begin to really see what Sterling did, not only in the NFL, but also in college, they'll really appreciate what he means to South Carolina because we're part of a generation that never got to see him play. The generation before us certainly did, and they rave about him. But I think
yeah,
now that this enshrinement is happening, people are going to really appreciate not just Sterling, but maybe the era that Sterling played in a little bit more. But regardless of what it may be, this is a great honor for Sterling, and it's a great honor for the University of South Carolina because now we have somebody who is enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton.
Man, you said a mouthful there. I mean, there's
What else is new?
obviously, obviously Stephon. Stephon's just a no-brainer, a guy that was a top 10 pick overall and has lived up to every bit of it since that fateful day when the Bills took him. And I remember people that were like, "Why did the Bills spend?" I think I think he was the number
10.
9 pick,
It was 10.
9 or 10.
Yeah.
And when the people were like, "The Bills are crazy," and then you do like you wait like 3 years later, and it's kind of like I kind of was giving them the look of like the guy, the cameraman from South Park when Randy was about to end word. I'm kind of like, I'm just looking at them like, what now? But
Yeah.
Stephon's just been a guy that's put up great production everywhere he's been. His numbers speak for themselves. He's one of the goats at cornerback, and fortunately played at our university. And I think if you look at it, Debo Samuel, if he can stay healthy, is a guy that I could see trending that direction or on that track.
Time will tell on Debo.
Yeah, he's either going to end up being Debo Samuel or he's going to end up being the football Anthony Davis. So we'll see.
Well, yeah.
Um,
Again, time will tell.
yeah, and reality could be somewhere in the middle there.
We shall see. But really appreciate you jumping on with me today. Hopefully, this is the first of many that we're doing together. I know I've been lacking a little bit because I haven't done a show since right after the bowl game. But don't worry, we are going to have previews of each game. We're going to have recaps of each game as well. So we're probably going to be doing at least 2 shows a week. You know, it'll be a lot of fun, I think. Hopefully, people will enjoy it. We certainly will appreciate people's feedback. Uh, we'll put this up on YouTube so that it can be readily available. We're not going to charge anybody or anything like that. We'll just see where this thing goes, and I certainly had fun doing this today. Hopefully people enjoyed listening to it, and like I said, my friend, we'll be talking again next week after the draft, and hopefully people will enjoy this, have as much fun listening to it as we did talking.
Yeah, John, thank you for having me on, man. It's always a blast. I'm a school teacher and I'm on spring break anyways. Had the time to kill, but I've always got time
We're
to
going to
talk about.
Cancun for spring break.
But that was good timing. That was good timing as
Yeah.
always.
And we're over an
Yeah,
hour now, so I think this is probably going to be about the norm for what our show is going to be.
But guys, we didn't script this, we didn't rehearse this. John and I talked over the phone and said we're gonna hit these main points.
Yeah, I
And
just
I
did a
mean, like,
checklist on my phone here, and we've spent an hour and 3 minutes talking about 5 different topics that
yeah,
that I bullet pointed. So uh, next week probably won't be quite so long because we're just going to simply be talking about the NFL draft. But as the season gets closer, certainly with media days coming up in a few weeks, we'll have a lot more to talk about and we'll have a lot to cover. Hopefully, we can get some guests on that will be able to help us out as well. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun and looking forward to the next one whenever that may be. And as we've said, we're probably going to do it again next week. So looking forward to it, my friend.
absolutely right back at you, my brother.
All right, buddy. You take care.
All right, you too, buddy.
All right.